All right, we're wrapping up day 2 of PAX East. Right here with Bob Webb of NextGen Pants. He is apparently the self-proclaimed everyman of the studio. So we were looking at Tetropolis. We just had a private demo for it. You know, it's really tough to explain what it exactly is. So you know what? I'm gonna let Bob take over real quick. Bob?
So Tetropolis, in a word, is a Metroidvania, which is kind of a mashup of like a falling block puzzle genre game with Metroid Castlevania. It just, in itself, doesn't really describe the game at all. So, you play as a tetromino, a puzzle piece, and you kind of you're puzzle platforming around the world, set inside a puzzle itself, because the world is a puzzle, the map is a puzzle. You move it around, along with the whole Metroidvania progression, where there's gated progression, abilities and upgrades and everything. So that's it in a nutshell.
All right, I'm just going to ask this question. Are you crazy?
Yeah, I think I'd have to be to do this.
And that's why I think this game works. So it's a Metroidvania that you're just a Tetris block, and you're just walking around there. When you look at the trailer, which we did before we came here, I actually physically laughed out loud because I thought, this is ridiculous, Bob. Like, you are changing the actual map in a Metroidvania so you can get to secret places. What gave you this idea?
Well, originally the idea of a Tetroidvania was such a mystery to us. We came up with the word, and then eventually decided, all right, I'm gonna actually do something with this word and make it a thing. And came up with the idea of, well, let's just kind of throw a Tetris skin on top of a Metroidvania. But you know, that's just a boring reskinning. So eventually I had, you know, everything was Tetris. So the rooms were little tetrominos. We could go through the map and you see all these little shapes and everything. And with drawing from inspiration from Castlevania Symphony of Night, I had that kind of epiphany moment of, that was really cool, of having the world just change in just a simple way of having everything go upside down. And I wanted to have something that was that kind of disorienting while having that kind of wow factor. And just naturally it came up with having it being, let's just have the rooms being moved around, have them be dynamic. You know, create your own Metroidvania, basically.
Yeah, so you go into these control rooms and you can flip the map. You can't change everything, but most of it you can, and you just try to almost connect the dots so you can get into the different doorways and such. So there's secrets, other things that you can open up. My favorite part, I think, about the game, one of my favorite aspects, is that you can actually, in real time, tilt everything on the map, so you can see all the blocks and the creatures and whatnot just go, ah! Like, that's great. All right, so you're able to transform into different Tetris blocks and utilize different special abilities. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we wanted to have that kind of power progression that you usually get in Metroidvanias, and the concept of having the different tetromino shapes tied to abilities was something that we originally came up with. That's sort of how we kind of crammed Tetris into Metroidvania. And we wanted to be able to have the everything kind of feel differently. Like you start off as a square. It's very versatile. You can move around, you tumble around. It feels a little clumsy, but it's kind of fun and charming. But then there's you get your Goomba stomp with your square. You also have the line piece, which allows you to do a spring jump and do the super jumps, because we have the standard Metroid type things that people are going to be expecting. There's got to be a double jump. There's got to be a super jump. Those kind of things.
You have to have it.
Yeah, you're going to be expecting that. So.
Fair enough. So there's a couple of other pieces that we need. I did not intend that. I did not intend that. There's a few things that I'd like to also discuss too, such as you've got boss fights in this game. Now, we didn't get to see any today, just because Bob likes to make things difficult for me. But maybe you talk a little bit about some of those encounters. Like, what are you hoping to do with this kind of game?
So the boss fights are kind of like the with sort of the game design theory as being the final test for all the lessons you're learning through the level. And so in each of the worlds, you're learning new puzzle mechanics, you're learning new abilities, and these boss fights, because we're in a Tetromino factory, the fights are going to be themed around either elements of the environment or like machinery. So, for example, the boss we're thinking of for the factory one is a giant chainsaw that destroys the completed rows that come off of a falling block puzzle game. They got to go somewhere. They got to get destroyed. So this fight is themed after that, where the bosses are big compared to the player, like not super large because they need to be able to fit in the world. But we want to have a way of like using the spring jump to be able to get to higher places and allowing you to slam down on vulnerable points and whatnot, even with later abilities you'll be able to get. And even connecting rooms in specific ways can change aspects of the boss fight. So you may have a resource in a fight you wouldn't have had because of how you configure the world.
There's a lot to this already, and it's just super early on. I mean, I'm excited to see it, but I got to ask too. How serious is this story going to be?
Surprisingly, it's very serious. Which it came out that way. It's such a ridiculous notion, but we kept coming back to these more. It's because a story about self-discovery and finding your purpose in the world because you're rejected. You're rejected for not being perfect, and this is kind of something that I guess a lot of people can relate to, where you don't fit in, to use a Tetris pun, and it's a little bit of kind of a revolution in what ways, because we have we're helping these other characters that are not perfect and they're kind of hidden and rejected in the world, and as you help them along, they in turn will help you, and you kind of start an unintentional revolution along the way. So it's a really weird story to have in this kind of game.
I would say, well, so why don't we talk a little bit about when you expect this game to come out? I know you're the everyman, and I know there's a lot of stuff to do. What are some of the future plans? What kind of time slots are we looking at?
So we're looking at probably springtime next year. We wanted to make the game about a 4 to 6 hour experience. So we want it to be long enough that you're satisfied with the experience, but not too long where we overstay our welcome, or too short where we don't give you enough. And I think that with the size of our team, which is just 4 people, we can probably execute on like a 4 to 6 hour, maybe 8 hour, depending on how long it takes you to complete the puzzles. We can probably do that in the next 8 months or so. Also depending on funding and whatnot. So if we do go to Kickstarter, and we can actually have the people quit their day jobs since we're all nights and weekends. So having more manpower is definitely going to help with that.
All right, and we'll wrap this up with a question we've been trying to ask a lot of people here at PAX. A very important question, the most serious one I've asked you the entire interview. So during crunch time, what is your go-to food?
Go-to food for crunch time? Is beer a food?
That's one.
Brewer, so I brew my own beer, so I always have that on tap.
Oh my God, he is the everyman.
Let's see, food. I would have to say powdered sugar donuts. They're terrible for me, but they're like crack.
I hope that no crack. There is no crack on the powdered donuts.
Who knows?
But
could be.
To come up with this idea, maybe. Anyhow, Tetropolis. It looks fantastic. You got to believe us on this one. Just look at everything. Give them a chance. Bob, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for talking to me.